Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome. Coming to you here from this beautiful park in Ojai, California. And today, what I want to talk about, and I'm going to try to make this quick. This is video number 6 in the Sexual Matrix series. In this video, I want to talk about the hypnosis of objectification, and really how objectification. You knew I'd have to talk about this. Objectification is kind of, in a way, you could see it as a seed for conditioning. And so I'm going to speak to objectification as we know it, but I also want to speak to the underlying false foundations of perception, the underlying flaws of perception that give rise to the possibility for objectification. And I'm primarily going to keep this within the context of humans. So objectifying humans, but you'll see how it relates beyond that. Now, if you guys are interested in connecting with me one-on-one, I'm doing donation calls right now, so you can go ahead and email me at Patrick Hayes, PatrickHaize, all one word, at gmail.com, or you can just DM me on whatever platform you're on. And with that said, like I said, I want to talk about how objectification kind of arises as a way of kind of engaging with our reality. And when you hear people talk about objectification, it's typically kind of spoken about as if someone is kind of objectifying someone else or seeing them as an object, and it's oftentimes used in the context of sexuality. So like someone is a sex object, and so, somebody's not seeing someone for who they are. They're just kind of seeing them for the opportunity to, derive sexual pleasure from them. But this actually goes way deeper. The capacity for objectification comes from a fundamental flaw in our perception of reality that is a flaw that ultimately finds its healing with self-realization. And it has to do with missing the deeper understanding of how the mind works in its own projections. So our mind is designed to work in projections, right? So when I say projection, I mean it in a neutral way. Obviously, there are projections that can have detrimental effects and ones that are necessary, because since the mind works that way, it's just it's just a natural consequence of how we perceive things. Is that we perceive and understand and think about things in images. And the fundamental flaw is something that on the surface level people are pretty familiar with, which is this idea of the map is not the territory. But how this actually kind of takes root into our consciousness goes a lot deeper than just understanding it on a surface level. See, how would I explain this? So essentially, when all objectification, so this is, which could eventually be the example I gave of objectifying someone sexually, all objectification comes from a disconnection from the actual person. When we're talking in the context of relationships with humans, it's a deadening of the relationship, or the exchange or the connection with somebody, by by perceiving somebody through the filters of our own projections, and then relating to them through the filters of our own projections, as opposed to connecting directly to them and experiencing them more or less as they are, experiencing their beingness in the moment. And we're at a time in history, and most of us, I'm sure everybody watching this video now at this point has grown up more or less in an age in which it's movie, magazine culture. It's maybe even past magazine culture. Maybe some of you watching this from magazine culture, which, if you go back far enough, you could say that the majority of interactions that people had, or the majority of things that people learned, or how people learned about other humans, is through actual interactions with other humans, like flesh to flesh, face to face interactions with other humans. Now, what's really strange about what's happened over the last 70 years, 80 years, give or take, is that magazine culture and TV culture and movie culture has had such a huge impact on our on how we kind of learn about, or at least are conditioned to interpret and relate to people. So when we look at the difference between these two kinds of interpretations, or I could say two kinds of kind of like learning mechanisms, either like learning how to connect with people directly or being around people directly and engaging with them as our way of understanding each other, versus growing up watching movies with particular, storylines and stories that are being told, reading magazines, looking at pictures, looking at archetypes through pictures and the stories that are associated with them, and developing a lot of kind of how we are deciding to perceive other people through a means that is not direct contact with people. You miss a lot of what the intended or the actual expression of a person is, and a lot of what you're seeing is more of a contrived expression, because these are all rehearsed, they're all designed, and many of them have negative agendas. As we all know, magazines and movies have all programmed people. There's a really strange kind of you could say like a cult mechanism or spell that is used in order to you could say program or condition people through, you could say, like a movie or a magazine. And this has to do with the law of state transference. So the law of state transference is a law that basically we've all experienced, and this is that emotions translate. Scientists call them mirror neurons. So if you're emitting a certain emotional state, the people that you're communicating with are going to feel that emotion. Now, one of the mechanisms that is used in order to program people to take on certain, paradigmatic or kind of dogmatic or, like socially acceptable or unacceptable perceptions about reality is through this law of state transference. So, and it's almost like a flipping of it. So what it'll be is something like, a great example of this was through making being a cold, that like I grew up with this, making being a cold-hearted street criminal cool, right? This was done a lot with gangster rap, to a degree with like the mafia kind of influenced media and stuff like that. But it was to make that cool. And so how did it do that? Especially when we talk about rap, well, it's like you have these people exemplifying and talking about all these really kind of things that would make you feel sick to your stomach, kind of, but doing it with a projection of an energy of I'm really cool. And you also see this with sexiness, like, oh, I'm really sexy. There's an energy that can be projected. So this gets very confusing, because when the energy mismatches the actual natural response to a particular like theme or behavior, and it's projected, the person can feel the energy of the projection and start associating whatever energy it is with the image or the motif or the archetype that's being projected, and kind of get confused from their own natural response. And it's a lot easier to do this through a TV screen or through a magazine, because it's not real life. So when it's not real life, it's like the stakes aren't as high. You might not necessarily feel the natural response as much, but you might build a whole identity surrounding, oh, it's cool and I feel cool if I'm heartless street gangster, with the idea of I'll kill someone in a moment, to prove my pride or whatever. That's like a cool thing, right? So it's very strange, because this is a way that mass programming can happen. And this is just a bold example, but when you start kind of applying this understanding across the board, you can see that it's all over the place. So we have this programming that has went in and programmed us quite deeply on all sorts of different levels. Of course, in relation to the sexual matrix, a lot of this has to do with what we're attracted to, what we're aroused by. All of these things have been programmed, and they've been programmed through repetitive images, repetitive story themes, and repetitive motifs, and the application of different archetypes. Objectification very clearly is relating to somebody through the prism of our own projections, as opposed to being present and experiencing them for who they truly are. Now, this then turns into, what you could say is like sexual objectification, because, if somebody has been, if we've been programmed to be aroused by certain motifs under the archetype of quote unquote the hot girl, and these are the kinds of, kind of diluted archetypes that we've kind of now taken on. Oh, that's just a rich guy. That's just a hot girl, or that's just a douchebag. Like all these different terms, we've developed these kind of deep, almost like relationships with these archetypes. And then when we see other people that have a motif that is similar to, or that is representative of one of those archetypes, our whole kind of belief about what a douchebag is or what a hot girl is, we kind of project and use the actual person as an object to hang that projection on, and then we see them through the lens of that projection. So if someone's archetype is, oh, that's the hot girl, and I've been programmed to want to go after the hot girl and be attracted to or aroused by the hot girl, I'm not seeing the person for who they are. I'm seeing them through that lens, and then I have a desire that wants to be fulfilled, and they just become a means to fulfill that desire. Now, this is not something that only happens, it goes both ways. And what I mean by that is that people are objectifying themselves all the time also. And so this is a disconnection from the living self in order to crystallize into a cold image and deny the self, which is really kind of the foundation, or like a foundational understanding of disassociation. The disassociation is like, when you've told somebody, you're like, oh, hey, so like you feel kind of triggered right there. Like, I'm not triggered. No, I'm not triggered. I'm fine. And it's like they're clearly triggered, but they don't even know they're triggered, right? See, they've disassociated from, the truth of their beingness, of what they're experiencing in the moment. And through that disassociation, they don't even feel it. And so what they're doing then is they're attaching to some sort of image or archetype of how they feel like they should be or would like to be, and they're kind of living outside of their body, disassociated from the fullness of what they are, right? And so this is how people objectify themselves all the time, and this is one of the challenges that happens with that the occult kind of manipulation that I was talking about, because people can tune into certain frequencies that will say suggest like that you'll feel cool doing this particular thing, but when you're actually doing that particular thing, there's a lot of conflict in your nervous system, so you don't feel cool doing it. But if you focus all on the image, it kind of squeezes you out of the nervous system, and you can find some sort of ego feed. In other words, where you reward yourself mentally for doing it in some sort of way, and try to live in that space, which is disconnected from the truth of who you are, and is disassociated from that true self. And this is self-objectification. So what happens is we have people, we have a conditioned paradigm that has been kind of implanted into people's consciousnesses, in which there's more or less certain themes, archetypes and motifs that have been presented in a certain way that are highly rewarded, you could say, in the culture. And they don't really necessarily, sometimes they can, but they don't really represent the truth of someone's natural kind of opinion about something, or natural orientation to something, but they represent how they've been programmed. And so then you have what you could call in the sexual matrix the sexual marketplace. And so this is kind of like what is, what gets a lot of points, what's a high ticket menu in the sexual marketplace, and what's a low ticket menu. And so then you have a lot of people that are objectifying themselves in order to fit these programmed archetypes, in order to grab attention, and be a high ticket item in the sexual marketplace. And then you have people that, because they are, hypnotized by the program, that are drawn in and attracted to the particular motifs that have been programmed, and the particular kind of archetypal examples that have been programmed, and so they're hypnotized for it, so they're drawn to it. And so what's happening here is this entire relationship between the two people is just one of objectification, where one person is playing into the costume that gets the attention, and the other person is attracted to the costume. So the person's not attracted to the actual person, they're attracted to the costume, and the other person is abandoning themselves to play into that costume. And it's usually happening on both levels, right? So like in both directions. So you have this, terrible objectification that is going on. But, the thing to really remember about this objectification thing is that, simply put, it is putting the story or the image or the archetype or the motif, the image inside of your head, before actual connection with the person. And so the solution to this really is learning how to put connection first. What is actual connection? How can I connect directly and truly, presently, to the person that I'm interacting with? We can't get rid of the mind's natural pattern of working with projections. The mind works with projections. It's going to work with images. It's going to kind of understand things through images. It's going to identify archetypes through the different motifs that are associated with that archetype. And we can change the stories inside our mind, and you can change stories to be more accurate in general, but stories will never connect you to the actual person. True connection is being present and connected. And this is the skill that seems like people have lost in this huge media culture, right? Is the ability to connect directly. And trauma actually plays a big part that prevents people from being able to connect. So I want to wrap this up here because this video is getting pretty long, but I think I've said about what I want to say. Again, I'll reiterate, the key here really is putting connection first over our own images, recognizing the mind's going to project. That's how it works. That's okay. It'll work in projections, but strengthening our ability to be present and connect directly with the person. And connection, a greater maybe definition of connection that you could take home, is being fully present so that you can feel the inner landscape of the person that you're communicating with, and not get distracted by the little images or the clothing or the archetype association that you may make with that person, right? But actually connect to the inner landscape. And a true relationship between two people, a living relationship, a living relation in the moment, is when both people can feel each other's inner landscape, and they can also feel the other person feeling their inner landscape. So I can feel you feeling me, and you can feel me feeling you. So that's something to shoot for. Okay, there we go. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Like I said, if you do want to talk more about this or anything else in relation to the sexual matrix or anything in general, you can reach out to me, either email me, or you can to DM me on one of these platforms. And then if you want to stay up on everything that I'm putting out, and I have other things that kind of go out behind the scenes, you can join my email list. And I'm going to have a link in the description here to join my email list. And if you're on one of the, like Instagram or Facebook, you can just shoot me a DM also for the list link to my email list, and you can join that way too. So yeah, thanks again for coming out and connecting with me, and I'll talk to you next time. One love.